For today's Business Matters, we have Don Ma here with us. Don, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Yeah, pretty good. What's happening in the business world today?
All right, let me get started right away. Weekly jobless claims in the U.S. fell last week. The federal government reports first-time applications for unemployment benefits fell last week from 231,000 to 219,000. So last week's numbers, less than expected here, and the number of continuing claims was 1.8 million. It's down from the previous week and lower than expected. Meanwhile, Apple will soon know what it needs to do, the company, to comply with the European Union's Digital Digital Makers Act. So it requires the tech giant to open up its closed ecosystem to rivals or possibly face a hefty fine. Antitrust regulators launched the first proceedings to look at connectivity functionality for smartwatches, headphones, VR sets, and other internet-connected devices. Apple said it's going to work with the Commission and also warned that the European consumers would be at greater risk of bad actors accessing their devices and data. And the White House says the review process of Nippon Steel's proposed purchase of U.S. Steel is ongoing. National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby said yesterday that he knows of no delay or extension. Kirby said the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States runs an independent process. U.S. Steel is facing political backlash over Nippon Steel's $15 billion bid. Both Republicans and Democrats argue the company should stay American-owned. That includes, of course, President Biden and former President Donald Trump. The United Steelworkers Union has criticized CEO David Burritt, accusing him of misleading workers for personal gain. The deal has also become a key issue in swing state Pennsylvania ahead of the upcoming presidential election. And global stocks got a lift today. That's after the Federal Reserve cut rates by 0.5 percentage point yesterday and as well signaled there was more to come. Take a look at this.
Japan's Nikkei index jumped around 2.5% in morning trade, while Australian stocks hit record levels. That followed all-time highs for the S&P 500 index in US trade. Investors were cheered by the outlook from Fed Chair Jerome Powell, who said the US economy was on track.
This decision reflects our growing confidence that with an appropriate recalibration of our policy stance, strength in the labor market can be maintained in a context of moderate growth and inflation moving sustainably down to 2%.
The Fed's move is expected to support spending and the US economy in general, offering hope for Asian exporters. Japan's big names were also boosted by declines for the yen against the dollar following the rate cut. Toyota and Hitachi were both up over 5% in morning trade. With the Fed's big call out of the way, Institute of Global Finance Director Fariborz Moshirian says investor focus now switches to the US election.
Who will be the president, if you like, in 2025 onwards, because their policies, depending on who is going to be their president, will directly influence actually the value of US dollars, inflation in US, basically, and hence interest rate. So that's a space that we really need to wait and see.
Not every sector joined the party on Thursday, however. Asia's big chip makers tumbled after a downbeat outlook for the sector from Morgan Stanley. In South Korea, SK Hynix plunged around 8% and Samsung was down close to 3%. That drove the country's benchmark Kospi index lower in morning trade.
U.S. existing home sales fell more than expected last month. Supply improved, but prices remain high. Home resales account for a large chunk of sales. That number dropped year on year, while the median home price increased to the highest record on record for any August. With the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates, Freddie Mac saying that the average rate on a 30-year mortgage fell to about 6%, the lowest level since early last year. And lower mortgage rates could encourage homeowners to list their properties and increase supply, but some economists say the main problem in the housing market is affordability, with many potential home buyers being priced out. Prices are near at record highs, coupled with rising home insurance and property taxes. And a report by the Federal Trade Commission reveals that social media companies collect, share, and process vast amounts of user data while offering little transparency. Now the agency is focusing on how the platforms employ artificial intelligence. The report analyzed how Meta, TikTok, and others manage user data. The FTC concluded that the company's data management and retention policies were woefully inadequate. The report also included YouTube, X, Snap, Discord, and Reddit. Though its findings did not reveal specific practices, big tech companies have been scrambling to acquire data to train their emerging artificial intelligence technologies. The FTC says many gather data on individuals who don't use their devices. And smartphones largely replaced beepers decades ago, but tragically returned to headlines with the deadly multi-day attack in Lebanon. At least a dozen people were killed and thousands were hurt. This comes as Israel has declared a new phase of its war on Hezbollah. Members of the Iran-backed terrorist group still use pagers to communicate. In fact, the group's leader told members to ditch their cell phones. Some prefer beepers because they're not trackable and work without Wi-Fi or cell service. Pagers run on radio waves. Beepers also are still present in the healthcare industry as well. An engine problem earlier this month caused Cathay Pacific to ground its fleet of Airbus A350 jets for inspection. Now, Hong Kong Aviation inspectors say the issue could have escalated into extensive damage. Here's that story.
Investigators say they know the cause of an engine failure on a Cathay Pacific flight. They blamed a damaged fuel hose, which also showed signs of a fire. The probe was conducted by Hong Kong's Air Accident Investigation Authority, which released its results on Thursday. It began investigating after a passenger flight on an Airbus A350 jet received an engine fire warning shortly after takeoff on September 2nd. Investigators found a ruptured fuel hose in one of the plane's engines and 5 more secondary fuel hoses showing signs of wear and tear. The report said this, coupled with other factors like the presence of oxygen and a heat source, could lead to a fire that spread. It warned that if not found promptly and fixed, that could lead to further failures and potentially cause extensive damage to the aircraft. Cathay Pacific began inspecting all its Airbus A350 jets after the incident. The airline said it was the first component of its type to suffer such a failure on any A350 aircraft worldwide.
And Europe's top court has ruled Booking.com price restrictions are unnecessary and could reduce competition but are not anti-competitive. Booking.com uses a practice known as party clauses. This prevents hotels from offering lower rates on their own sites or on rival sites. Germany has banned the practice, but the EU as a whole allows such price curbs only for hotels' own sites. Booking.com expressed disappointment with the ruling. And Alphabet's Waymo is in talks with South Korea's Hyundai Motor to outsource manufacturing of its self-driving vehicles. South Korean newspaper Electronic Times has reported. Look.
Waymo is talking to Hyundai Motor about making its self-driving taxis. That's according to reports by South Korea's Electronic Times newspaper. It says the pair have met several times to discuss using Hyundai's Ioniq 5 vehicles for Waymo's next-generation cabs. The report says they would replace vehicles from Chinese maker Zeekr, which the Alphabet unit is currently testing. It all comes as the Biden administration locks in steep tariffs on Chinese imports, including a 100% levy on electric cars made there. A Waymo spokesperson would only say that it was hard at work on its 6th-generation vehicles, based on the Zeekr platform. Hyundai said nothing was determined at this stage. Media reports say the South Korean giant's own self-driving unit has delayed plans to launch a robo-taxi service using the Ioniq 5. Besides the tests with Zeekr, Waymo has bought vehicles from brands including Jaguar Land Rover to offer autonomous taxi services in Phoenix, San Francisco and Los Angeles. Alphabet said in July that it planned to invest $5 billion in the firm over several years, with a view to expanding ride-hailing service to new areas.
And PepsiCo has reacted positively about their use of Tesla electric semi-trucks. They say it's even helping with driver retention. NTV's Sean Marshall has more.
PepsiCo says their development of Tesla semis is going, quote, smoother than expected, and that their usage is even helping the company retain drivers.
So we'd just like to thank PepsiCo. They've been a great partner.
Let's take a look at how Tesla semis differ from conventional semis. Elon Musk posted on X that compared to diesel, Tesla semi-trucks have a lot more acceleration, uphill power, and computer-controlled safety features like jackknifing protection, so both more fun and safer to drive.
In the U.S., there's like 15 million passenger vehicles and a couple 100,000 semi-trucks. So it seems like a small percentage, but it's actually 20% of U.S. vehicle emissions. So from a sort of health standpoint, particularly in like cities, this is a huge impact, like gigantic. So that's why we're doing it, you know. So.
But it can't all be sunshine and roses for electric semis. The downside is mileage and the lack of a developed charging infrastructure. Diesel semis can get between 900 and 2,000 miles on a tank full of fuel. In comparison, e-semis get about 500 miles per charge, each of which takes 45 minutes. Electric semis are also expected to cost a lot more money than diesel semis, but Tesla says that its focus is on total cost of ownership, which benefits EVs thanks to fuel savings, according to an article on Teslarati. The article also suggests, without going into cost details, that PepsiCo's experience may boost Tesla's claim that a Tesla semi can replace a diesel truck one for one in terms of capacity and cost. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And just quickly onto markets, as we mentioned earlier, all smiles on Wall Street today. The Dow is up 500 points, S&P breaks 5,700 for the first time ever, and the Nasdaq up 2.5% today. Tesla shares also up 8% today. And with that, all the things happening on Business Matters today. Carrie, Fiona?
What do you think of those semi-trucks made by Tesla?
Well, you know, as Sean mentioned in the package, there's definitely pros and cons to them. The pro, I would consider, it's definitely cheaper to operate, right? Because electricity is cheaper than diesel. But the downside, I think the major one is a lack of charging infrastructure. It takes just too long to recharge those trucks.
Yeah, and I think, those issues, they're less of an issue, especially the lack of charging blocks or the charging time or the lack of mileage. Those are smaller issues for household car drivers. But when it's these big commercial vehicles, I think that's a really big issue that they still have to work the kinks out of.
Yeah, it definitely can impact logistics and the timing of transportation and everything.
Very exciting. I'm looking forward to where this plays out in the future. So thanks, Don. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, thank you.